fade green. Are you an ultimate Eagles football fan? Well, you're in the right place. Ready? This is Birds 365, hosted by the new Mac and Mac, Jody McDonald and John McMullen.
Here we go!
Who collectively have covered and talked about more than 50 plus years of Eagles football. Kick off your day with Birds 365. You'll get debate.
We love to argue.
You'll get the real story from inside the locker room. And you'll hear from some of the great football minds from around the region. You're about to become an Eagles insider. Get in the game. Join Jody Mack and Johnny Mack and join the football community that flocks to Birds 365. Birds 365 starts right now.
Welcome to the NFL. Let's go! Let's go! Go!
Is a Wednesday morning get-together here on Birds 365. You got your Mac and Mac guys, John McMullen and Jody McDonald here to talk about the undefeated Philadelphia Eagles for the next couple hours. Johnny Mac, how you feeling this morning?
I'm doing well. How are you, Jody?
I'm doing better than well. I have to admit something.
Here we go.
I cheated this morning.
Oh.
Every
cheated.
morning I get up and 29 out of 30 days, I have cereal for breakfast. It's just easy. It's quick. I grab a bar, come downstairs. I start to prep to join you here on Birds 365. And I split my cereal. I have Heart Healthy Cheerios, half a bowl. And then I have some kind of cereal that I probably shouldn't eat that's got too much sugar on it. And I've got 3 or 4 different boxes, and I just like kind of rotate them. But I put the Cheerios in there every day to try and make myself feel good about eating well.
I like the Cheerios. I eat the Cheerios. I like the ones with the hearts. And by the way, the one
Heart Healthy, yeah. Oh, yeah, that's what I have every day.
Yeah.
Today, I had sugared cereal and sugared cereal.
Wow.
I was just in too good a mood after the Phillies win game 1 of the NLCS. Yours truly was on the air till 2 o'clock in the morning, so a little bit of a short turnaround. So I said, the extra, talking myself into the extra cereal will help me get through the show today. Don't worry about the coffee, but that extra sugar on the cereal will get you going. So I went Fruity Pebbles with marshmallows.
Fruity Pebbles.
Yes.
I'm surprised your wife lets that in the house. See, that's how
I purchased it for myself.
Oh, there we go.
And Lucky Charms. I'm a marshmallow guy. I like marshmallows in my cereal. So no cut in half with Heart Healthy Cheerios today. Pure sugar. So I'm up, I'm pumped.
Good.
I'm ready to talk Eagles football with you for the next 2 hours.
I need that. I need that energy. I need you to pick me up.
I got it in.
Yeah, some of these baseball games, they take a long time, but it's
last night didn't. Last night was quick.
No,
they had 4 friggin' hits for the entire game between both teams.
I'm a Yankees guy, so I'm usually watching Yankees games, and they never even put the ball in the play, which drives me crazy. I mean, I don't enjoy the modern game, but the Phillies, by the way, are built for the playoffs. I mean, they got the top level of the starting rotation.
Correct.
They got the power. I mean, that's all you do in modern. You hit home runs or you strike out, and you need good starting pitching. Now, the bullpen has been holding up. If you have all 3, you're ready to go.
The Phillies are getting that kind of pitching from the back end of the bullpen. Both of the guys after Wheeler went 7, which we debated on the air. Should have never taken him out. I'm not second guessing what Rob Thompson is doing these days. Every button he pushes seems to work for him. So,
it's easy when your starter goes 7 and gives up 1 hit. Did he give up 1 hit? I believe.
Yeah. Oh yeah, that's 1 hit.
I mean, that's it. They should have left him in there, to be honest. But
except they didn't need to.
no, they didn't need to in hindsight. But when somebody's throwing a one hitter through 7 and he's at 80 something pitches, I mean, come on.
Understood.
I gotta leave him in there until there's a base runner at least.
The two relievers did not give up a hit either. They came in through their clean innings. Yeah, they had an error in the 9th inning that made it kind of interesting, but certainly Alvarado was able to get the last 2 out. So Rob Thompson, once again, tip of the cap. Even when it seems to be a questionable call, the results come in and you find out it's not.
And by the way, it's not even questionable by the modern baseball thinking. I mean, you get the guy out, but yeah, I'm kind of old school in that approach. I mean, if somebody's pitching lights out, I'm not touching him. Let him finish. If he can finish, let him finish.
Understood. But Wheeler, because of the injury that he had late in the season, had not gotten through 7 innings in months since the last time he got.
Yeah, I know, and that's
not
part
gotten
of
to
it,
the 8th. So,
and I'm going back to. Yeah, I'm not.
Yeah,
that
Tom
old,
Seaver wasn't on the hill last.
Yeah,
Catfish
Tom
Hunter
Seaver,
was not pitching last night.
Catfish Hunter, Don Drysdale,
Yeah,
Mike, 30 something complete games.
This is MLB 2022 where things have changed. And things have changed for the Philadelphia Eagles. That they've gotten off to a 6-0 start. They're not going to lose this week. I'm guaranteeing you. You want a bold prediction? You want a hot take? The Philadelphia Eagles will be undefeated when we do Birds 365 next week as well, because they are not playing. It is the bye week. And you had a chance to hear from Nick Sirianni on his Monday gathering. And the coordinators yesterday know that they're going to keep it pretty much buttoned up. But learn anything of consequence from either of the coordinators? Who both, again, check the results. You can have nitpicking issues with the coordinators if you want. Here's the bottom line. They're 6-0. They're highly ranked on both offense and defense. Learn anything from the coordinators yesterday, J-Mac?
Not really. I had some work being done at the house, so I couldn't be there live. So I was just listening in. I wanted to ask Jonathan Gannon about the tackling because I've been doing my own self-scout of this team, and I think, going through the first 6 games, the one issue that keeps popping up is tackling. They're not a good tackling team. And I wanted to ask him about that, but I didn't get the opportunity. But, I mean, overall, there's this narrative going around, I think, that, the Eagles haven't played a complete game, and what if they play a complete game? Well, nobody plays a complete game, honestly. Nobody. Perfection is that nebulous standard that everybody strives for, but you can't reach it. I've said all along, 6-0 is 6-0 contextually. This is a very good team. Obviously, top 5 offense, top 5 defense. We've talked about the special teams part of it. Number 2 in scoring differential. Every number, they've been dominant. So I kind of take the other side of the coin. I'm naturally a contrarian, but I kind of take the other side of the coin. Can they keep this up? Can they keep this up realistically? Is this, and I've used that term before, is this sustainable? I don't know if it is sustainable. I know it isn't sustainable if they don't start tackling better because, again, I've been doing my own self-scout. So Detroit, they were terrible. We know that. That was the 14-15 missed tackle game.
Terrible.
So I went to the PFF grades. They were below average, well below average against Minnesota in week 2. They just blew them out. The one game they tackled well was Washington, and they blew them out. They have not tackled well now for 3 consecutive weeks, according to PFF. Below average against Jacksonville, terrible against Arizona, below average against Dallas. That has been a bigger issue than even special teams from a they've been consistently poor tackling. Consistently poor. And that's a concern. That's my biggest concern as we go into the post-bye. And I start to ask myself, Jody, and I'll throw this at you, get your thoughts, because I've been talking about this since the offseason. Son Reddick, great pass rusher, undersized. Kaiser White, great coverage linebacker, undersized. Chauncey Gardner-Johnson has struggled all year tackling. Marcus Epps, he's not bringing the wood as a safety. He's not but you're not allowed to be, but still, he's not the intimidating tackling safety that you think. Other than TJ Edwards, who tackles well on it? Slay doesn't tackle that well. Bradbury doesn't tackle that well. No corners tackle that well.
I was going to say, what corners do?
And that's
you talk about
we talked about
to bring the wood. Corners don't tackle. If your guy catches the ball and you bring him down, that's all you need to know.
Modern baseball. We just talked about modern football. Corners don't tackle, right? Watch an SEC game. They don't tackle. Even at Alabama, they don't tackle. I don't know. If you get into a game against a team that can keep it close, that can run the football, is that jump up and bite you on the what? I don't know.
I think you made the best point right there at the end. Run. When other teams run the football against the Eagles, Ezekiel Elliott is going backwards. I don't think anybody would question that. He's not the runner they once was. Damn if he didn't look like Ezekiel Elliott of about 2018-19 against the Eagles this past week. That's where I think their issue is not on pass plays. Marcus Epps hasn't laid anybody out. Okay, nobody lays anybody out anymore. Both of their linebackers, specifically Kazir, more so than Edwards, but Edwards isn't bad in pass coverage as well. They're fine. I don't think there's guys making plays in the middle of the field and breaking tackles and turning 8-yard slants into 40-yard gains. No, it's straight up against the run. And they use the big guy Davis for as many plays as they do, and you and I have gone over it. They're very slowly, incrementally increasing his snaps on an almost weekly basis, but this just isn't that good a running defense, a defense against the run when it comes to tackling, plain and simple. And that's on their D-line, and Edwards is the better of the two tacklers, but he's had a couple of bad tackling games too.
Arizona, yeah.
Right. So their linebackers are good, but they're not perfect. Yeah, I think that's a legit question. Can they tackle better? Should they tackle better? Is the fact that they are at a couple of positions a little undersized actually a factor? I guess it kind of drops the weight on Hassan Reddick. If you're just purely looking at the undersized guys, Reddick and Kaiser White, they're part of it, but I'll point the finger at everybody. Hargrave, Fletcher, Brandon Graham. I know everybody loves him, but BG isn't this tackling monster either. So I think it's on everybody when it comes to being able to tackle against the run.
Yeah, and they grade 13 different categories over every game, right? So, there's 6 games, so you're the math guy. 13 times 6. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 poor grades in all those categories over 6 grades. Yeah. And compared to other teams, that is really good. That is really good. 5 of them are tackling.
Really?
5 of the 10. And 3 are special teams. So, which I think is obvious to people. But I don't think the tackling thing is as obvious. And they were really bad. You could see it. I think everybody knows they were really bad in Detroit. I think everybody knows they were really bad in Arizona. Those were the 2 really bad games. But they haven't been good otherwise as well. Only 1 game. They're above average in basically every single category in every game except tackling and special teams.
Right, and we'll see. Howie Roseman has 13 days. The trade deadline is Tuesday, 2 weeks from yesterday. Is Howie Roseman going to go out and get a superstar special teams player And if he is, could you at least give me a guess as to who he might be going after? Because I don't even know who that guy is.
Yeah, who is that guy?
I follow the National Football League pretty closely. You follow it even more closely than I do. Please name the superstar special teams.
Well, and by the way, those guys aren't getting traded. I mean, those guys aren't getting traded. People bow. If you have a good special teams player, you have a Pro Bowl special teams player. You don't see Matthew Slater getting traded back in the day.
Don't the Panthers have one of those guys? Because they're trading everyone else. They're just emptying out their entire roster. They traded Robbie Anderson yesterday, McCaffrey next, and Ed Burns. Don't they have a superstar special teams guy the Eagles can get their hands on?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if there's a Chris Maragos out there who's so good at special teams he's going to change things anyway. I think you got to continue to work with the guys who have shown some aptitude for it. Zach McPherson has shown some aptitude. Maybe at some point you got to get Andre Sacheret back up on the 53 man, and just let him go. Josh Jobe, I know, has been doing a lot of it before he got hurt. I think that's got to come from within. I mean, they need more consistency in special teams, and I think the bigger problem really than coverage is the blocking when it comes to the return game. That's been really poor.
Hasn't been there. As far as your point on tackling goes, and we're getting ready to punch up our first guest, our bud, John Stolnis from Bleeding Green Nation is going to hop aboard with us coming up in just a couple minutes. I'll draw a comparison between two teams in Philadelphia right now. The Philadelphia Phillies made the offseason moves that they made. They brought in Kyle Schwarber and Nick Castellanos, two really big bats. Now, Castellanos didn't have the year that he was expected to have. He put up much better numbers in Cincinnati and with the Cubs before that. Schwarber is what Schwarber is, the NL home run king. Neither one of these guys can field. And Schwarber was replaced for defense last night. If you ask me, I would have gotten Castellanos out. I know he made that great catch in the last round against Atlanta, but he can't play defense to save his life.
Nobody cares in baseball anymore. Yeah.
Well, guess what? Nobody cares about tackling in the NFL, John.
I know.
What is it you keep telling me about preseason stuff? Nobody worries about tackling or the running game
until that
first week of the season, and then everybody goes, "Oh, maybe we should run, or maybe we should tackle." Yeah. It's the same thing.
Well, that's my concern.
Shortcomings are
then my concern, and I know we got to get to a break and get to John, but here's my concern is that the Eagles are going to be Green Bay from last year. And Green Bay, it was totally outplayed San Francisco. Maybe it's a bad weather game. In that case, it was the blocked punt, and they lose. And all of a sudden, you're the best team, and you're sitting there, and you're going, "What happened?" And you're shaking your head. That you're right. I mean, and like I said, watch Alabama, Tennessee, which the greatest game ever. It's exciting. They can't tackle, they can't cover. I mean, and that's the highest level of college football, and that's where it comes from. You're right. Nobody tackles, but it doesn't matter until it matters. Exactly. I'm just throwing it out there.
But same thing that I said about the Phillies defense all year. Here's the Phillies defense. Awful. Guess what? They're 3 games away from being in the World Series. You find other ways to compensate for areas where you're giving up, because if you think you're that much better in a different area, you just have to balance it out. He's McMullen, I'm McDonald, the Mac and Mac guys here on Birds 365. John Stolnis, our pal from Bleeding Green Nation, going to join us and talk about the undefeated Birds next here on Birds 365.
At Pond Lehocky, we've recovered billions of dollars for our clients, and we're confident we can do the same for you. With over 250 years of combined courtroom experience, we've helped over 100,000 injured clients obtain some of the largest settlements in Pennsylvania. One conversation is all it takes to help you and your family get back on track. If you've been injured in an accident, give Pond Lehocky a call.
Go to get your game on. Go for the beers. Go for the cheers. Go for the hit and the hits. Go for the steaks and the stakes. Go to get your parlay on. Go to get your party on. Go for the scene. Go for the screens. Go for the gallery. Go for the win. Go to Ocean. Visit theoceanac.com to plan your visit.
Go passionately. Go fearlessly. Go confidently.
Go Birds!
Go confidently towards your goals with First Trust, Philly's hometown bank for nearly 90 years, and the official bank of the Philadelphia Eagles. We're focused on getting you over the goal line. So go with conviction, go with trust,
Go Birds!
and go forward with us by your side. First Trust Bank, the official bank of Philadelphia Dreams. Oh, and go Birds.
Welcome to Pond Lehocky. We've helped over 100,000 injured and disabled workers obtain benefits, as well as some of the biggest settlements in the state. If you've been injured at work, give Pond Lehocky a call.
Score and save in southeastern PA and Delaware with Colony Pools this football season, and let the experts close your pool with a custom Merlin safety cover in green for the birds. And if you join our Winter Watch team, we'll give you another 20% off, and Colony Pools will handle it all. Keep your tiles on your pool, not in your pool. Fly with Colony right now, Birds fans. Visit flywithcolony.com.
Jeff D'Ambrosio, Destination Downingtown's 5-day used car super sale. Jeff puts an end to high prices now. 5 days of the best car, truck, and SUV deals ever. Over 1,000 vehicles, every make and model. Stop overpaying. See Jeff today and get a quality car, truck, or SUV now. The 5-day used car super sale. Experience how easy it is to deal at Jeff's. Nobody treats you better. Nobody gives you more. Jeff D'Ambrosio, Destination Downingtown. GoJeffAuto.com.
Midweek session with the Birds 365 guys, Mac and Mac. We're adding a third voice to the mix, and a very informed one as well. Does a great job covering the Birds for both Bleeding Green Nation and on his podcast, Eye on the Enemy. John Stolnis jumps in with us here on Birds 365. You got green on? Is that a green? You got a hat.
Went old school this morning. Went old school this morning. Yeah.
Yeah. We're going to have to make, God forbid if it's Phillies Houston, because we're going to have to make Jalen Hurts pretend he's a Phillies fan.
Yeah. I think Jalen's savvy enough. He'll get it.
He will get it. He is savvy enough. He will get it. It is a good time for you, John. Obviously cover the Phillies as well at the Good Fight. But you know, we're an Eagles show, so I'll get some Phillies in at the very end. But as far as this team, as we head to the bye, I saw you pop in there. You might have heard Jody and I discussing. You know, I kind of look at this. I think a lot of people have said, you know, if the Eagles put together this perfect game, how good could they be? But, you know, that's kind of a standard that's unreachable. As a contrarian by nature, I go the other way. Can they keep this up? Can they keep playing this well? And I point to the tackling. Even more than special teams, because that has been, and if you look at the PFF numbers, that has been the one area that the Eagles have been consistently bad in. Not even mediocre, bad. 30th in the NFL. Only one team worse, tied for 30th. Jacksonville's the only, our old friend Doug Peterson. Right. Everything else, they're top 10, basically, except special teams. But they're better in special teams than tackling. Am I being too concerned, too self-scouty in this bye week? Is nobody cares about tackling, as Jody rightfully points out. But he's right. Contextually, though, they've been at the bottom. They've been the worst of the worst. Any concern to you?
I think as long as they're getting a big lead early, I don't worry as much about the tackling, because we're really seeing that manifest itself in the run game. And if you're ahead by 2 touchdowns, if you're ahead by 17 points, 20 points like they were against Dallas, and Dallas is going to run the ball to get back into it, you're probably okay with that for the most part. I think the other side of that coin too is what I saw on Sunday night, especially in the third quarter. I saw a lot of guys trying to go after the ball as opposed to trying to lock up the ball carrier. And we know that this team is getting a ton of turnovers. They lead the NFL in turnover margin, and that's been one of the big keys to their success early going. They've forced a lot of fumbles. It's worked in a lot of cases where going after the ball, being a ball hawk, knocking it out, and recovering it has been beneficial to them. It gives you a short field. It means Jalen Hurts doesn't have to go 85 yards every single time. But the other side of that coin is that you sometimes will have the first guy, second guy, third guy miss. So there's a little bit of a trade-off there. I think there are times where, especially if you're up by 14, 17 in the third quarter, at that point, you don't really need a kill shot. You just need to stop the other team from stringing together first downs. And so I think that's where you could maybe, as the defensive coordinator, say, listen, stop trying to go after the ball because it's leading to arm tackling. Get in front of the guy, get him down to the ground, make them punt, and let's let our offensive line, let's let our running game, let's let Jalen Hurts ice this thing for us like they did in the fourth quarter last time around. I'm not overly concerned about it, but it's a worry.
Here's what scares me even more than tackling. And John's point, of course, is right on. But it's just I'm one not surprised about it. And I guess I shouldn't be surprised about what I'm concerned with. 6 wins, 3 of which the game got close. The Eagles needed to be able to both kill clock and move the ball. And they did just that against Detroit week 1, against Arizona, and this past week against Cowboys. When they needed it in the fourth quarter, the other team was making it a game. They took control and said, we're going to run it right down your throat. And they did. And they've effectively won all 3 games. Detroit never got back on the field. Arizona had to settle for a longer field goal than the one the Eagles did. And the Cowboys were taken out because they actually turned that long drive into a touchdown. Is that over expectations? That when we, and I state it this way, obnoxiously so, for a reason, when we want to, we'll run it right down your throats. Is that too much to believe that they can just reach into their back pocket, play that card, and go, oh, yeah, here's a 7.5-minute drive. Take this.
I don't know.
Are they that good that they can just do that? They have been. Can they continue doing it that way?
I don't know if they have an 8-minute fourth quarter drive in them every game, but I think it was impressive that they did it against the Dallas Cowboys, who are legitimately one of the best defenses in the NFL. True. And when your big strength is your offensive line and you have the depth on their offensive line that they do, I think you can rely on the second best running game in the NFL last year to be that unit that will get you along clock-eating drive when you need to stop the bleeding. And that's really what they did. They needed to stop the bleeding. It's like a relief pitcher coming in and giving you 3 innings after the starter gets shelled, right? You need someone to come in and stop the bleeding. And the Eagles running game did just that. They've done that a few different times. I think we've seen that you can rely on it to a degree, as much as you can rely on anything in sports. The Eagles run game is as about a reliable thing in the NFL right now with the RPO. No one does this like the Eagles are doing it. And then when you get to the end of that drive and you get close to the red zone, all of a sudden now you've run the ball 9 plays. AJ Brown's going to pop now for 22. And then, okay, Devontae Smith's going to leak out into the end zone and you're going to score a touchdown. So it's just, it's a formula that NFL defensive coaches have not cracked just yet. And so I think it's a pretty dependable thing at the moment. And I think we also have to remember last week in the third quarter, and I think we saw this the week before as well in Arizona, they're dealing with offensive line issues, guys shuttling in, shuttling out. When you lose Lane Johnson, it takes a few series to figure out how to deal with that for especially a young offensive line, a guy like Jack Driscoll moving from left tackle to right tackle, and he's all over the place. It takes a little bit of a time to get everybody on the same page. And I think by the fourth quarter, their third possession in the second half, remember, it was only their third possession. The defense allowed the Cowboys to have 2 long drives. The offense really didn't get their hands on the ball all that much in the second half last week. By their third possession, without Lane Johnson, they had gotten it figured out. And I think you can rely on that.
Yeah, I like that word, John, reliability, because I think the running game for this team is very reliable. I think even when you talk about losing the offensive lineman, because Landon's been dealing with this ankle, this foot injury. He's been in and out. Sue Opeta comes in. You mentioned Jack Driscoll, whether it's left tackle, right tackle. Sometimes those guys have trouble with pass protection, but they can go straight ahead.
Yeah.
And we know Jordan Mailata and Dickerson, how good they are. And Jalen Hurts as the vaunted +1, I'd like to say, yeah, people don't know what to do. The conflict on that pass to A.J. Brown where Micah Parsons, he doesn't know what to do with that RPO. You know, do you go after the quarterback? Do you drop into coverage? I think all of that is reliable. I like that word. Now, I talked about the tackling. That hasn't been reliable. I'm going to give you one other category. And Jonathan Gann is going to hate me for this. All defensive coordinators are. But there's a certain randomness to turnovers in the NFL. And nobody wants to admit that. I don't want to use the term luck. Whatever term you want to use, there's a randomness to it. And the Eagles are turning the ball over and turning the ball over and turning the ball over, and they're protecting the football. They're +12, John.
Yeah.
The second-ranked team in the NFL is +4. That is astronomical.
Yeah.
Can that continue, or is there going to be a regression to the mean?
There will probably be a little bit of a regression to the mean, but we have seen teams in the past play a full season where, for whatever reason, they're just scooping up turnovers and interceptions all over the place, and it lasts for a full season. And we might see that with this team this year, because I think if you look beyond the turnovers, the cornerback play of Darius Slay and James Bradbury, just how few yardage, how few passes they're allowing and how few yards they're allowing indicates that they're not getting lucky with interceptions. They're not, you know, Asante Samuel was a great player, but Samuel sometimes would get burned because he would, you know, be too aggressive and going for picks. I don't think those are the kinds of interceptions we're seeing. The last interception by Gardner Johnson on Sunday night came because of pressure up the middle.
Brandon Graham,
Yeah, exactly. And so I think if you can, I think one of the areas the Eagles could look at the trade deadline is getting some more help along the defensive line, because the more pressure that they can get with 4 guys, the more of an opportunity you're going to give those guys in the secondary to pick balls off, and because they're playing so well. And one thing we've seen from this secondary that we haven't seen from Eagles defenses in years past is not just getting their hand on the ball, but actually catching it. One of the jokes we used to have at BGN Radio was we used to say a lot of these Eagles defensive backs had butts for hands. Like, you know, it's just like they're catching every ball with their fists, and it's really hard to intercept the ball when you can't actually bring it in. And what we're seeing with this group is they do that. They actually can bring the ball in when they're in the air, competing with a wide receiver for it. The Gardner Johnson interception, I don't think we've talked about how great a catch that was from a guy who left the game with a bad hand. I don't know how he got his hands underneath that ball and held on to it. In seasons past, that kind of falls through his hands and it's an incomplete pass, and the Cowboys drive continues. So I don't know that they can continue this at the rate that they're doing it, but they have the formula in place to cause turnovers, and right now they are finishing the play.
And, oh, by the way, John gave you the numbers. They're +12 right now as the lead team in the NFL. Second place +4. That's just almost incomprehensible, the difference between them and the second best. Not any other team. The second best team, they're 8 turnovers ahead. They're 8. They're +8.
Yeah.
In the plus column, part of that credit's got to go to the offense.
Yeah.
Jalen Hurts doesn't throw picks. Jalen Hurts, as much as he runs, doesn't cough up the football. Miles Sanders, although he's at times in his career had an issue or two with fumbling, hadn't had it this year so far. Yes, let's give the appropriate credit to the defense. But if you're talking plus minus, the Eagles take care of the football, and Nick Sirianni does prioritize that. Sure, he even took a shot at Joel Embiid, which, oh, by the way, he was right because Joel turned.
Oh, he was 100% right.
Night. You got to take care of the ball, Joel.
By the way,
give the props to the Eagles offense, too.
Real quick before you jump in, John, I asked Nick that question. He wasn't taking a shot at Joel. He was just being lighthearted, but he's 100% right. I mean, Joel Embiid needs to and by the way, it's not happening. Now we're getting into a Sixers wormhole. He's not taking care of the book. But so anyway, but go ahead, John.
Well, I think one of the things we've seen also is the running backs have done a great job of protecting the ball. Miles Sanders has long had a fumbling issue, but that hasn't been the case. I think I read today he's somewhere over 120 some straight carries without a fumble. It's just the way they are being really drilling that with these guys to take care of the football. Running as much as they do, you would expect a couple more balls to hit the ground. But they're just not, it's not even like that they're fumbling and recovering them. They're just not putting it on the ground. So I agree with you. The offense, as far as the plus minus ratio goes, Jalen Hurts not throwing picks, being very disciplined with the football. They have receivers now who are big targets in the middle of the field so that defenses can't clog up certain areas of the field and cluster in certain places to get turnovers and get interceptions. He's spreading the ball all around the field. And when they're running it, they're not putting it on the ground. I think it's been a point of emphasis for them, and we're seeing it work its way so far to their benefit.
You mentioned something that perked my interest up, John. The trade deadline's coming up November 1st. Carolina's having a bit of a fire sale, or at least that's the speculation. Robbie Anderson's already out. We'll see if Christian McCaffrey. I do not think Brian Burns they're going to trade him. But you mentioned the defensive line. I look at this team and I say, I don't know if I want to mess with this team. Mike Gill is going to be on the show with us in the second hour. He asked me on his show yesterday about Deshaun Jackson. I'm like, I want no part of Deshaun Jackson. Luckily, he signed with Baltimore. But just as a punt returner. And I was still like, no, I don't want him. I don't want him. Would he be better than Britton Covey? Yes, as a punt returner. But anybody who's met Deshaun, he's not a bad guy, but he thinks he's Deshaun Jackson of 28. He's not going to be happy with that role. I don't want to mess with this. Nick talks about it to the point it becomes a cliche, but the connection and how close everybody is, I don't want to mess with that. Am I crazy to say, just leave it alone?
Well, it has to be at a position that you really need some help. And I think you have to do your due diligence and background on the guy's personality. We saw the Eagles add Jay Ajayi midway through the 2017 season. That team had great chemistry. They were rolling, but they perceived a weakness at the running back spot. They were one guy short, and they brought in a guy in Ajayi who seemed to fit right in, didn't mess with clubhouse chemistry. He provided a ton of production in the second half of that season and was a big part of their Super Bowl run. So I think it can work. I wouldn't say that they shouldn't go out and get somebody, but they've got to feel, like you said, John, they've got something special going right now. And you don't want to mess with it. You don't want to screw with the clubhouse chemistry, with the locker room chemistry. And I agree with you that I think Deshaun Jackson wouldn't be a great fit at this time. And thankfully, he, again, like you said, signed with the Ravens. But if there is somebody else out there who they feel like can help in an area of weakness, and, that's not a problem player, he's a guy that you feel is going to fit right in, I think you have to look at not just what they do on the field, but what their personality is like and what kind of teammate they would be mixing with this group before you went ahead and added them at the trade deadline.
Kind of with my partner here, I think it's more likely that the Eagles won't make a trade than they will. But Howie has always been a proactive guy. Mm-hmm. There are two ways he can be proactive here. One's got a deadline attached to it, 13 days, the trade deadline. The other is contract extensions. Now, we got three really key guys signed last year: Goddard, Mailata, Maddox. Huge, lock these guys up, make them part of the foundation. The Eagles defense has a lot of guys whose contracts are up at the end of this year. Mm-hmm. And you want to pick and choose exactly the right one. There's a lot that goes into it. Who wants to talk, who wants to stay, who wants to be reasonable. Is there a guy, a pecking order you would put Hargrave and Cox and Bradbury and Gardner Johnson and Kaiser White and Edward, both linebackers? That's a whole lot of your defense's contracts up at the end of this
Marcus
year.
Epps, throw Marcus
in there too. Do you think there's a priority in that mix?
I do. I mean, well, I would probably focus on the two secondary guys first. I would probably focus on Bradbury and Gardner Johnson. It's such a huge thing when you can just put two cornerbacks on a guy in Slay and Bradbury and just really not have to worry about doing a whole lot to help those guys. And Avonte Maddox is, of course, a really good cornerback. Like you mentioned, he's going to be here for a while. Gardner Johnson has been a really big addition to this team, too. He kind of got off to a little bit of a slow start as he got familiar with the defense. But obviously last week, Sunday night against the Cowboys, he had a phenomenal game. After that, I'm looking at the linebackers, and I think it's an interesting decision between Kaiser White and TJ Edwards. Edwards has gotten so much better since his rookie season. Like we talk about these guys when they come to the NFL, they're not finished products. A lot of these guys can continue to improve, and Edwards has done that. I love Kaiser White. He's been a playmaker. You also have Nakobe Dean, who's going to need some playing time at some point. So I think you only sign maybe one of those guys long-term. My guess is, boy, if I had to choose between Edwards and Kaiser White, I'm probably choosing Edwards just because I think he's more of a captain of the defense. He plays middle linebacker. He is a guy that you selected as an undrafted rookie, and you've developed him. You probably have more invested in him. I would hate to lose Kaiser White, but Kaiser White would probably, need a little bit more, I think, than TJ Edwards, and that allows you to work Nakobe Dean into the lineup next year. That's a lot of thinking way down the road, but for right now, that's probably my pecking order. And the rest of the guys, I'm probably in wait and see mode.
More immediacy with this criticism, and Gannon got it again yesterday. I think the 6-0 record has kind of muffled this. I think if the Eagles were average 3-3 or even below average, this would be blown up to unbelievable proportions. But people still keep talking about Jordan Davis and when is he going to play more? When is he going to play more? The reps, which like I said, I'm a little surprised about because of how much overall success. Right now he's a run stopper. He's a 2-down guy, and everybody wants him out there for all this time. And my thing is, it's a luxury right now. You still have Fletcher Cox. You still have Javon Hargrave. As you kind of pointed out, John, with the linebackers, long term, it's going to be Nakobe. So you're kind of making that decision, TJ versus Kaiser. Same thing with Jordan Davis. Long term, he's going to be out there.
Yeah.
You got to make a decision, Fletcher or Javon. But you don't have to make that decision now. Why is everybody forcing? Why is everybody trying to speed that up?
Yeah, I mean, I think you have some time. There's certainly, I don't think if you wait a little bit of time, it's not going to necessarily convince a player to go someplace else, especially if this team has a special season. Guys are going to want to come back. And then you basically have to, choose what's going to be best for you long term. And you're going to have a Jalen Hurts contract to talk about at some point. So you've got to factor that into who you're going to extend on the defense, and anybody on offense you want to extend. There's a lot of different things that go into this for sure. And, you'd like to have as many guys in the fold long-term as you possibly can. But in the NFL, there are a whole lot of different moving pieces. I do trust Howie Roseman in this area. They seem to have made the right choice on most of these kinds of guys during the course. Really, the big miss was probably Carson Wentz, right? I mean, that just didn't work out. But other than that, I struggle to think of a player that they've re-signed that you look back and say that was a mistake. Maybe a Derek Barnett, but you only bring him back for 1 year. You know what I mean? Like there just hasn't really been anything where I think he's made a big miss.
Here's why I'm okay the way they're using Jordan Davis. As John said, it's a luxury item, and at least he's getting more snaps than Marlon now, which earlier in the year, Marlon would be getting more snaps there. So it's a progression. They're moving it up a little bit more every single week. So I'm not going to get on JG's case for that. They're doing he's handling Jordan Davis as best as he can be handled. All right, 6-0 bye week, John. They've got downtime. They come back. The schedule is not killer for the next couple of weeks. Eagles are certainly going to be favorites. When they come back and return to practice, they'll have the entire week to get ready for the opponents, have some extra time. What is it they should be looking to upgrade? Is there anything specifically in practice, getting to know each other, the whole Gardner Johnson had to get up to speed, and several things that have gone down with this team this year? Is there anything in the limited amount of practice that A, the collective bargaining agreement gives them, and B, the front office / doctors and those who advise as to how much stress they should put on their players give them? What is it that Sirianni needs to upgrade when he has a little extra time to work with players next week during the bye week?
I heard you guys talking about special teams before the break. I think special teams is this team's big weakness right now. And so I think figuring out I am less concerned about the return game. I would love to have a returner out there like Turpin, like the guy the Cowboys had the other night, who could really change the game with one play. But those guys really are few and far between. And the return game in special teams anymore, nobody returns kickoffs anymore. It's all punts. And so I would love to be able to work somebody into that. But I don't know that you're adding that guy from outside, and the guys that you have are probably the guys that you have. So I'm working on the return game, like making sure that you're staying in your lanes, guys are getting covered, you're not getting burned on trick plays, all that kind of stuff. I think Michael Clay needs to get the special teams down and get that to be less of an Achilles heel for this team, because that will bite them if they're not careful. Tackling is the other thing. We talked about it at the start of the show here. They need to work on tackling to make sure that finding a balance between trying to strip the ball out and then bringing the ball carrier down to the ground. The other thing I would say is what's going on in the third quarter. A lot of times, again, like I mentioned, we've had offensive line stuff coming in and out, different guys getting hurt, learning what to do with Lane Johnson not in there. But also, I think these coaches need to sit down and figure out, what are we doing at halftime? What are we doing in the third quarter, offensively and defensively, where we just don't seem like we are ready when we come out of the locker room, where it takes us 15 minutes to kind of figure out what's going on. Are we eating too many oranges at halftime? Are we is the Gatorade spiked? Like, what's going on that we need to figure out how to get out of the gate in the second half, score on the first possession, treat the first possession of the second half like you would your first possession of the game, and see what's going on there, because that is a little bit concerning. Not a lot, because they usually have a big lead at halftime, but figure out what's going on in the third quarter.
All right, John. The main event, I can't believe I'm saying this, at John Stolnis on Twitter, last one from me. Obviously, cover the Eagles for Bleeding Green, but you cover the Phillies for the Good Bite PH, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
I mentioned at the top of the show, I don't know if the Phillies are built for 162. They're not when you talk about teams like the Dodgers or the Astros, but short series, man. Top of the rotation, power, and if the bullpen shows up, and it has been, that's all you need to win a short series. This team in a lot of ways is built for the playoffs. You agree with that?
Absolutely. And I've been saying that all year, that if they could get that monkey off their back of falling short of the playoffs, all of a sudden that pressure's off, and now you've got Zach Wheeler, Aaron Nola, 1-2 at the top of the rotation. You can pitch them 4 out of a possible 7-game series. And that's what they're going to do here. And the Phillies have not always taken advantage of Zach Wheeler and Aaron Nola starts. I think they're under 500 over the last couple of years when those guys start games for them, which is a little weird. But, those guys give you a chance to win a 7-game series, to win 4 out of 7 every time you line them up. The offense, these guys are different guys are stepping up every night. Now Kyle Schwarber is getting hot. Bryce Harper is hot. You've got different guys at the bottom of the lineup who are coming through in big situations. The key to this team continuing its run is the bullpen. And I think all of these guys are pitching with confidence. They're all throwing strikes. That's been the big thing with this bullpen. Throw strikes. And Sir Anthony Dominguez is throwing 100-mile-an-hour strikes. Jose Alvarado is throwing 100-mile-an-hour strikes. They're just pumping one strike after another, quality pitches. And if you can continue to get the same kind of production that you've gotten from Brad Hand, from David Robertson's back, he pitched really well in the Cardinals series. You've got Andrew Bellotti, who's pitching really well. Zach Eflin out of the bullpen has been really great. The bullpen's going to be the key here, because I think the starters are going to do well enough to keep this team's head afloat. If the relievers can give them 2-3 innings every night, they are built to win against any team in the playoffs.
All right, JS, for my last question, I'm going to jump back over to the Eagles, and I'll probably tick off some of our streamers here, because I'm going to ask you a hypothetical that will keep the Eagles from being 17-0. Sorry. Okay. If they're 16-1 when the season's over and done with, okay? I know everybody, most of the people listening, and you certainly know the schedule, but I'm going to rip through it real fast. Home Pittsburgh, at Houston, home Commanders, at Indianapolis, home Green Bay, home Tennessee, at the New York Giants, that is, at Chicago, at Dallas, home New Orleans, home San Francisco Giants. If they're losing one game, and I will not accept week 18 because they've already salted away everything in a game in which they're trying. No JV participation like last year. If they're going to lose one, which one is most likely?
I think it's probably at Dallas on Christmas Eve. If Dak Prescott is back, I think Dallas right now, to me, is probably the third best team in the conference. I liked Minnesota from the start of the season. I picked them to win the North, but Eagles have obviously already beaten them. Dallas is good.
They've already beaten Dallas too, John.
That's true.
That's true. They have missed the game this past week.
True.
But they did beat Dallas.
But no Dak Prescott.
And that's the thing. If Dak Prescott is back, they have had a hard time with Dak Prescott, with the exception of the game in what was it, 2019 at the end of the season?
Though. He was hurt.
That's right. Yes, he was hurting in that game. So. Yeah. And he might be hurting. I mean, that's kind of been his MO. He's had a hard time staying healthy these last few years. So I think if you've got a healthy Dak Prescott in Dallas on Christmas Eve, I think that's a tough game. I think that's the most likely one that they would not be favored to win. If they're not going to be favored in any of these games down the stretch, that probably is the one that I would say they're most likely to lose.
I think John made a good point earlier about the tackling, and I'd say specifically with the tackling, it's running. Two guys who two guys who worry me: Derrick Henry, Saquon Barkley.
Yeah,
you're looking at two of the best running backs in the National Football League, and if that's not an area in which the Eagles excel, those could be tricky games for the Birds.
True.
Always a pleasure, John Stolnis. Thank you very much for jumping in. You can read him on Bleeding Green Nation and catch his podcast, Eye on the Enemy, where you get your better podcasts. Thanks much, bud. We'll punch you up again next month. Appreciate it.
Sounds good, guys. Talk to you then.
Thanks,
John
Sean.
Stolnis. Always got the good earbud.
Yeah. You know, it's amazing to me that the Eagles are 6-0. They're the best team in the NFL. Even though Damo still has them at number 2. And I always say that.
But see, let me sorry to interrupt. But let me make this point, almost in defense of Damo. Here's why I said last week, when some idiots had the Eagles as the 4th-ranked power team. And 4th? Are you kidding me? And I said this before Buffalo beat Kansas City. If you had Buffalo number 1, all right, they got picked up by the Dolphins. Game that could have gone either way. Dolphins were 3-0 early. They looked like they were legit. If you didn't want to move Buffalo down from 1, I can take that. I would have the Eagles 1.
No, I'm just joking with Tom. I have no issue with that whatsoever, putting Buffalo at number 1. But I am interested.
Here's the point I was trying to get at. You said perfection is impossible. Oh, Buffalo's had a couple perfect games. They've played all 4 quarters. They've had a couple of games where they came out, scored early, kept scoring, completely wiped out the other team's offense, and didn't let them do diddly squat.
Hey, the Dolphins, the 72 Dolphins are obviously the only perfect team in NFL history. Patriots almost got there, should have gotten there, but didn't. But they weren't perfect. I mean, we say their record was perfect. I'm sure Buffalo in those perfect games, they might have dropped a pass, they might have had a fumble. That's all I mean by this perfect nebulous standard. Nobody's perfect. Nobody's perfect. You know, I do think it's interesting we're talking about if the Eagles can lose a game. By the way, if they're 16-0, did they try to win that 17th game?
I would bet against it. They'll try and win with their backups in there.
Well, yeah, that's what I mean. Do they play their starters to win the game?
No. Who's that? Why can I never remember this guy? Arch, the chief medical guy who
Arshdenota, Dr. Arshdenota.
Spell that first name for me.
ARSH.
Okay, Arsh. Sorry, I don't know. Would you be able to pick him out of a lineup?
Yeah.
Okay, you know him. I don't. Which, by the way, Johnny Stolnis mentioned they could work on tackling in the upcoming week. Not if Arsh has anything to say about it. They won't be working on tackling during this bye week. Here's my difference. Buffalo has had some games this year which have been close to perfection. If perfection is every single play, the exact right outcome, no, of course, no one has ever been perfect. Buffalo's been a lot closer in several of their games than the Eagles have. That's the only point I'm trying to make about a comp to the
By the way, I talked about, I know we got to go to our break. I talked about those those categories that PFF does. Eagles are number 1, Buffalo's number 2 in the entire league. Buffalo's been, has the higher scoring differential. Eagles are number 2. In all the categories, the Eagles have the better offense, the better passing game, the better pass blocking game. Buffalo has better receivers with Stephon Diggs and Gabriel Davis. This is according to PFF. They have the better run game, shockingly, which probably has a lot to do with and remember, this is just blocking and things like that, and they don't even try to run the ball. The running game with Josh Allen, the run blocking, it's the Eagles, obviously. Defense, it's the Eagles. Run defense, it's Buffalo by a tick. They're both pretty poor. Tackling, Buffalo, big advantage there, although they're not great. They have the better pass rush. Eagles have the better coverage. They have the better special teams. And more categories, the Eagles have been better than the Bills, according to the film. But yeah, they're a good team.
But every once in a while, you got to look at the scoreboard, John.
Yeah,
the film is nice. Ratings are nice. Scoreboard is the most important thing. The only thing that supersedes the scoreboard is the standings. And the Eagles are 6-0, and the Bills are only 1. If the Eagles have an advantage over the Bills, it's in the standings.
I'll be honest with you. If they played each other tomorrow, I'd pick the Bills.
Here's what you and I had some fun with this 2 weeks ago. Neutral field, Eagles, Bills. What's the spread?
Neutral field, I think the Bills are favored by 3.5.
That's what I was going to say, 3.5 or 4. Yeah, that's why I wouldn't have a problem with someone if they power rank the Bills ahead of the Eagles. I'll go Eagles, Bills in a toss-up, maybe 2 green-colored glasses, but it can be just as easily Bills, Eagles. At least we've done away with the debate on everybody else because Buffalo took care of Kansas City this past week, beating them in their house. So it's Buffalo, Philadelphia, Philadelphia, Buffalo. He's John McMullen. I'm Jody McDonald. We are your Birds 365 guys. It's a Wednesday, so we're going to go down the shore. Our pal Mike Gill from Sports Bash on 97.3 ESPN is going to jump in about 25 minutes or so. We'll come back. I'm going to ask John to go a little bit further than I did with John Stolnis when he was on with us. How he can't sit still for 2 weeks. He's not going to do nothing during this bye week. He's got to be working on something. Is it contract negotiation? John said yesterday, you got to pick and choose your spots here because Eagles are 6-0 right now. So you want to do so when you have leverage. But the timeline is the timeline. You got to get one of these guys done before you know everything you're up against it. And then it becomes a tougher conversation to have. All right, I want to go a little further on who the Eagles need to be looking at trying to get an extension done. We'll do that next year on Birds 365.
The greatest fans on earth. It's a bold statement, but would you expect anything less from Philadelphia? 58 years of heartache creates a toughness, a grit, a resolve not found in most. Sure, our prayers were answered, but now that we've had a taste, we're looking for more. Pond Lehocky, official partner of the Philadelphia Eagles.
The faces you know, the team you trust. The Delaware Valley's leading news program, Action News.
Go for the beers, go for the cheers, go for the hit and the hits, go for the scene, go for the screens, go for the gallery, go for the win, go to Ocean.
John McMullen and Jody McDonald are your Mac and Mac guys here on Birds 365. Bye-week conversation. Eagles will not lose this week. They will not win this week because they are on the bye week. And then the schedule.
Jody, I gotta jump in real quick.
You're not going to tell me the Eagles got player of the year.
No, one streak is over. The Eagles did not. Chauncey Gardner-Johnson did not get Defensive Player of the Week. Tariq Woolen of the Seahawks, the rookie corner, who I loved in the draft, by the way, ran like a 4.26 at 6'4". He is the Defensive Player of the Week. The one undefeated streak is over. 5 consecutive weeks. No Players of the Week for the Eagles.
And sorry, Chauncey, I didn't think you were getting it this week. Sorry you didn't. If you did, I wouldn't have complained. But despite your 2 interceptions, I didn't think that was happening. A quick peek of the Eagles schedule. Pittsburgh. Who's going to be the Pittsburgh quarterback when they show up here? They got a game this week.
I think it's got to be Trubisky. I think it's got to be Trubisky. But you're right. They have a game. So, if he craps the you-know-what, I mean, they can go right back to – but I would think right now it's got to be the great Mitchell Trubisky.
He was actually
facetiously.
He actually was good against the
Hey, kid's got talent, but yeah, I'll take my chances against.
I gave him a game ball on my CBS Sports Radio show on Sunday. I said probably because I might not get another chance to give it to him. So, Mitch, enjoy this one, buddy, because you earned it, but you may never get another shot. So
your guy Quinnen Williams, by the way, AFC Defensive Player of the Week.
And I forget if he won or not. No, it was a week before he won Angry Runs on the NFL Network, which I watch every single Tuesday before we start. He's a very good player. You don't get defensive guys winning angry runs, but he picked up a fumble and just he manhandled somebody. I forget who it was. Maybe it was Tyreek Hill. Houston the week after. Oh, by the way, how big a mess are they? I thought Jack Easterby was as ingrained down there in Houston as Howie Roseman was here in Philadelphia. See you later, bye. Their owner gave him his walking papers about 10 days ago. I didn't see that happening. That organization is a mess right now.
Yeah, that it really is. And you look at what they did with David Culley. Could they do the same thing with Lovie Smith? Why don't they just give Josh McCown the job? Yeah, get it over with.
Yeah, but then they'll fire him after 1 year too, because that's what they do with all of their coaches.
Yeah, I don't think they will. I think that's what they wanted to do, but they felt they couldn't do it. And when you make decisions at head coach, and I criticize Denver as well, because they made a decision at head coach to recruit a player, which is dumb. And, if you believe in a guy, even though you're going to take a lot of heat for hiring Josh McCown with no experience, if you believe in a guy, do it. But they were scared, and they're a bad organization. Bad organization.
Speaking of bad organizations, Washington the week after, chances are with Taylor Heineke coming to town instead of Carson Wentz. The Indianapolis organization is not on the sternest of footing either.
Yeah, how about Irsay going after Snyder yesterday?
Yeah.
That was
So,
awesome.
Those two guys back-to-back weeks, Washington and Indianapolis, before you get to Green Bay. This is a very doable part of the schedule, John. 6-0 can become 8-0. It can become 10-0 real fast. And then I kiddingly said the Eagles can't go 17-0, only half kiddingly. It's just so hard. And week Arch Stenoda is going to lay down the law. We can't play any of our regulars if we got nothing to gain from the playoffs. So 17-0 is, for my money, kind of a pipe dream. But
I'll tell you, Nick Sirianni, if he's listening, and I hope you are, I hope you have it on in the background, Nick. He's going to get mad at me because you can't look ahead. You can't look ahead. I don't see there's any way that this team is not 9-0 3 weeks after the bye. I don't see how they lose to any of those three teams.
Nor do I. They just have significantly more talented rosters than the next three teams that they're facing. So, they're going to 9, which it will get us talking about 17-0 if we're not already talking about it. But I do want to ask you again. We asked John Stolnis this. You commented a little. I want to hold you down a little bit more. The potential contract extensions that Howie Roseman may or may not be working on right now as we speak. You're right. You would prefer to do it when leverage is a little bit more on your side than it is on the other side. If your team is undefeated and we're arguing they are the Bills' best overall team in football, tough to go in and try and expect a player to take a little bit less than maybe the open market says. Here's the one thing that I think Howie can lean on, and again, it brings our guy Arch back into the conversation. Injuries. That's something you can always lean on. That you don't have to look up the record to that. Anyone can get hurt at any time, and it changes the dynamic of any negotiation. If a player suffers a major injury, it handicaps his, compromises his position to be able to ask for a big number via a salary. I think this was before your time here in Philadelphia, but we had this once here. And we should get on and talk about this. Remind me to reach out for next week, Seth Joyner. When Seth was at his heyday playing his best football for the Eagles, his running mate at linebacker was Byron Evans, B&E.
Yeah, B&E.
And B&E was one of those guys. Do you want to extend him? Key member of the defense, middle linebacker, calling the signal linebacker. And at least the way it was reported by good reporters, kind of like you. We could ask Tomo this question. He was certainly covering the team at the time. The word was that the Eagles had made him a very fair offer to sign a contract extension. And it wasn't fair in Byron Evans' mind. They just couldn't come to him. Byron thought he was better than what the Eagles were offering him. And he never signed off on it. And in the second half of the year, last year of his contract, he ripped up his knee, but good. And he never got that multi-year contract offer from the Eagles or anybody else thereafter. And it truly did handicap him. Now, this is 20 plus years ago. So this is not something that you can relate to today's players, but you can try. And there might be some agents that have been around long enough that can relate to the fact, a major injury at the wrong time can cost your client a whole bunch of money. That's what I think Howie's got to lean on if he's going to get a deal done over these next couple of weeks.
Yeah, I think it's. This seems like a Arch Stenoda day. I'll bring him up again. I mean, the difference in medical procedures from today back, even that time frame is huge. I mean, a knee injury today is not nearly as devastating as it was back then. So that kind of works against you in that aspect. I always say you can't legislate injuries from a team perspective, from a player perspective. You see guys bet on themselves every week because you can get hurt in this league. I mean, We see with Lamar Jackson most notably. Now, it helps that he was a first-round pick, so he's got the big spike in salary anyway from his option. Guys bet on themselves all the time. I think from a leverage standpoint, this is not the time for Howie Roseman. They're too good. That's probably not going to change, though. So I look at the two guys most likely to sign extensions being the two sort of homegrown guys, and Marcus Epps isn't technically homegrown, but he feels like the Eagles are the team that gave him his chance. So I think there's some loyalty there, and TJ's completely homegrown. Same thing. I think he feels a loyalty to the Eagles. I think maybe you can, this is probably not the right word, but it's what you do in negotiations. Maybe you could prey on that a little bit more than what I call the so-called mercenaries. James Bradbury's been around for a long time. He's been through free agency. He knows how this works. He knows if he keeps playing the way he's playing, he's going to cash in. Now, maybe his age plays into that a little bit. Kaiser White as well. You know, he's not happy with the deal he got. So he probably wants to go back on the open market. I don't know if he's going to be apt to take much of a discount. You know, Fletcher and Javon are interesting because I've always thought the Eagles got to choose one. And, you know, they probably want as much information as possible. And I think, you know, Howie's very close to Fletcher. I think that helps Fletcher. There's a lot of moving parts, but I don't think you can sign both of those guys. I really don't. So that, to me, would go a little bit deeper. And then Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, I think, is in that more information category as well. He's made some splash plays, but overall he hasn't played that well, and that's a difficult transition. They're hoping he gets better and better and better. Jonathan Gannon mentioned it yesterday. He's left some stuff on the table, to be kind, but he's made some splash plays. He's certainly improved. He's better than what they had, but I think they want more information. So I think the two most likely remain TJ Edwards and Marcus Epps.
Would tend to agree on both of those two guys. And if you had to choose one or the other, here's the question I would have for you. We talk probably too much about the value the league puts on a position, which I love the fact that every single general manager on the planet says, I'm not going to be dictated by what other teams do. Yeah, you are. Everybody
are dictated. Yeah.
You can kid yourself that you're not dictated to, but that's the way sports works these days. Contracts are what it's all about. Where is the NFL at putting value on the linebacker position and the safety position? Is there a big difference? We know it's quarterback, it's wide receivers, it's pass rushers, it's tackles. Those are the positions that get paid more so than the others. Comping linebacker to safety, how big a deal is that difference?
Neither are, marquee positions, which
Right.
are now, obviously quarterback, but left tackle, offensive tackle, cornerback, edge rusher, defensive tackle. But safety is bigger than linebacker. And it depends, like I put edge rushers in a different category. Some people, Hassan Reddick's a linebacker. No, he's not. No, he's not. He's an edge rusher. They pay edge rushers. They don't pay linebackers.
Right.
Safety,
And neither of the Eagles linebackers is considered a pass rusher.
No, Hassan Reddick is, and they paid him. So, kind of semantics there, but edge rushers get paid. All-ball linebackers don't. With safety, kind of in between, they'll pay proven guys. It's interesting. Safety might be the most interesting position in the NFL. You saw it with Marcus Williams. The Eagles wanted him. He got a big payday. They pay veteran proven guys, but they don't value safety in the draft. We can't take a safety that high. it's bizarre because they're willing to pay. It's usually both. It seems like they're willing to pay proven veteran safeties, but they aren't willing to, push them up. I mean, occasionally, Kyle Hamilton this year,
Right, but
but
which,
very
I was
rarely.
going to say, which got taken first this year? Was there a linebacker actually taken before Kyle Hamilton? I don't think so.
I don't know. Occasionally, Devin
The kid
White
from
was
Utah. Where did he go?
no 20s.
20s.
Yeah, nobody. The first linebacker was the kid, the Georgia kid that to Green Bay, I believe.
Right, but I look at him like
And he
Hassan
was
Reddick.
he was in the 20s as well. So this year, but there have been linebackers in the top 10. Roquan Smith, the kid in Tampa Bay, Devin White was a top 10 pick. So, it always depends on the player. Like running back, right? We talk running back is clearly devalued.
Yep.
Saquon Barkley, Christian McCaffrey. It's always on the player. If there's just a flat out, no doubt about it player, yeah, he'll get pushed up in the top 10. I thought Kyle Hamilton would have went in the top 10 this year, but he fell a little bit out. Overall, though, they don't value safeties as much as other positions as young players, as rookie players, as draft picks, but they value them as veterans. So it's a little bizarre. Usually edge rushers, they value. Tackles, they value. Quarterbacks, they value. It doesn't matter. Young, old, indifferent. Safety's a little bit of a weird in between.
Right. And I asked you specifically about the league in general, but if you're going, which is actually more important, directly to the Philadelphia Eagles, with the offseason that they had, yeah, they were ready to pay Marcus Williams. They had what was assumed to be a really competitive offer out there, and Baltimore just came in and blew that offer out, and he ended up signing there. So if you're just trying to read, if you got him like this and one's going to go this way, one's going to go that way, linebacker or safety, I think the Eagles value safety more than they do linebacker, and that may play to C.J. Gardner and or Marcus Epps' advantage.
Well, the good thing is also they're not going to have to pay either of them anywhere near what Marcus Williams got. So in the case of Marcus and TJ, they're both, and that plays into it as well. They'll both still be cost effective from the Eagles standpoint.
Which has got the better chance to be less cost effective?
Boy, neither. But if you're asking me who's going to make more, probably TJ by a smidge.
Yeah, see, I'm not sure of that because I think the Eagles do.
He's just more. He's a better player.
That wasn't the question I asked you.
I know, and that's more. Why. But that's why I'm explaining. If it were even, or even Marcus was, TJ was slightly above Marcus. Yeah, I know what you're saying. Safety would get more money. I think TJ is going to get more money because he's a significantly better player.
All right, here's one you can look up during the break while we punch up Mike Gill. Where TJ Edwards ranks among middle linebackers and where Chauncey Gardner ranks among safeties. My guess is it's going to be TJ higher, but I'd like to know the comp one between the others since we do bring in and incorporate Pro Football Focus's rankings enough. I think it's one that's worth comping. All right, we're headed down the shore next. Our pal Mike Gill from the Sports Bash 97.3 ESPN joins us on Wednesdays here on Birds 365. He's coming up next.
Go to get your game on. Go for the beers. Go for the cheers. Go for the hit and the hits. Go for the stakes and the stakes. Go to get your parlay on. Go to get your party on. Go for the scene. Go for the screens. Go for the gallery. Go for the win. Go to Ocean. Visit theoceanac.com to plan your visit.
Jeff D'Ambrosio, Destination Downingtown's 5-day used car super sale. Jeff puts an end to high prices now. 5 days of the best car, truck, and SUV deals ever. Over 1,000 vehicles, every make and model. Stop overpaying. See Jeff today and get a quality car, truck, or SUV now. The 5-day used car super sale. Experience how easy it is to deal at Jeff's. Nobody treats you better. Nobody gives you more. Jeff D'Ambrosio, Destination Downingtown. GoJeffAuto.com.
Score and save this football season on your car insurance. Before the next game, save up to 40% on your auto insurance policy. That's right, 40% savings. Call an Audible this season and contact the Del Val Insurance Group. They're an advocate for you, not an insurance company. That means they'll get you the right coverage and save you up to 40%. Call managing partners Fran or Jim of Del Val Insurance, 215-354-0122, or score and save at dvigi.com. dvigi.com.
Hi everybody, my name's Jason Lombardi. I'm an inspector at DryTech. At DryTech we offer 3 major services, the first one being basement waterproofing. The second service we offer is foundation and structural repairs. And then the third service that we offer is mold remediation. If you feel you are having a waterproofing issue, give DryTech a call or check us out online.
Over the last 17 years, we've built a reputation of growing award-winning teams across the country. Staffing is not easy, but that's what we do every day, all day. The key to our success is storytelling, asking the right questions to find the right people. Hi, I'm Gary Kane, president of Kane Partners. We want to be your staffing partner.
Together here on Birds 365. Yeah, it's Wednesday, but it's a bye week Wednesday, which means we're not prepping for an upcoming Eagle game Sunday. Doesn't mean we can't be talking about them, and we'll do just that with our buddy Mike Gill from 97.3 ESPN, the Sports Bash down the shore. Mike Gill, what are you doing on the bye week?
Watching the Phillies.
Yeah. How about that? 6-0 Eagles, and they're not the story in this town. That's pretty amazing.
No,
I would have bet against that.
Well, this happened, I think it was 2009. The Eagles weren't as good, but when the Phillies were rocking, the Eagles played the Giants and the Cowboys in back-to-back weeks, and nobody cared. Like, when does that ever happen? But this bye week fits in perfectly with this run here. And then they play Pittsburgh, which is a team that is struggling, although they just beat Tampa Bay. You know, there's not a game on the schedule that is going to get you all juiced up and excited that you're going to miss. So it kind of fits in perfectly here.
Yeah. And I wouldn't say people do care about the Eagles, but it is kind of perfect for Philadelphia. They can take a little rest on the Eagles, and the Phillies are making their run. But it's Birds 365, so we'll keep it on the Eagles, as they say, Mike Gill. The streak is over. One perfect streak is over. No player of the week. You're here every Wednesday. You usually announce it during your appearance. No player of the week. Chauncey Gardner-Johnson.
You flipped me to the late time spot, and that's why he didn't win.
That's why.
Yep.
See, Chauncey, are you upset? Because I already see people are upset. Why are people upset about player of the week honors? 5 in a row is amazing.
Well, this is like being upset that a guy doesn't get named to the Pro Bowl team.
Yeah.
Right? Like, how frivolous is the fact that somebody wins the player of the week award? Now, Jalen Hurts wins player of the month, and that doesn't sell people, right? There's still questions about whether or not he's performing at the level that he's performed at. Yet, whoever decides these players of the whatevers decided that for the month of September, he was the premier offensive player in the league.
Yeah.
All right,
and he was, by the way. He was. He deserved that award.
Mike Gill, want to run this one by you. I'm in my car yesterday afternoon. I'm going over to the Turf Club to bet a horse by the name of Dinger, who won.
Oh,
won at 1-5 at Philly Park yesterday. I know the owner, Mr. Zachney, and I sent him a text. Didn't you graduating today? He said, oh, yeah. And getting Paco Lopez is going to help. 1-5. So you couldn't make any money on him. And a 99-1 shot ran second. And I didn't have the exactness. So I'm like ready to kill myself. But I'm listening to Marks and Reese on the drive home. And they asked an intriguing question. So I'll ask it of you. Which is more accurate a statement right now? The Eagles are 6-0 because they're great, or the rest of the NFL is not any good? You go in A or B?
It's a combination of both. I mean,
absolutely. That's the first thing that came to mind with me. Why can't it be both? I firmly believe that it's both.
Yeah, I mean, look, this team won 9 games last year. Let's not forget that. Now, they won 9 games because why? They beat up on a very mediocre to poor schedule. Well, here we are the next year. They have much more talent, but there's just no depth in this league, and they have a plethora of talent added to a roster that won 9 games last year. This should not be a surprise. Now, the fact that they're 6-0, sure, the flashiness of the record stands out, no question. But realistically, they added a ton to a team that won 9 games last year. And people say, well, they didn't beat anybody last year. Well, they're not playing anybody this year either. So you add better players to a poor schedule, you're going to have a result of what you have now, a team that looks more complete and better than everybody else, because the whole league, Jody and John, stinks. Well, I don't want to say it stinks. It's just
Does it stink, or is it just the same? Is it parity?
Right.
Because it's always
exactly what the league wants. They want people involved, parity, mediocrity, reign supreme. We want 9-8, that everybody in that last Sunday is still invested in their team. And that's what you're going to get. I mean, the NFC right now has 3 teams with winning records, or 4 teams with winning records. 3 of them are in the NFC East. The other one's the Vikings. So there's just a lot of mediocre to bad football teams. The Eagles happen to be a step above those teams. So it can be both.
I'm looking it up right now, Mike. So the final team in the NFC in the playoffs right now would be the Rams at 3-3. So that means the Packers, Falcons, Seahawks are all 3-3. They're on the outside looking in, but obviously they have hope. Teams we think stink, like the Saints, the Commanders, the Cardinals, the Bears, are 2-4. That means they're a game out of the playoffs. And even Detroit at 1-4, Carolina at 1-5 is the one team. Everybody's involved. That's what they want. So if I say to you, the Eagles, other than Buffalo, who could the Eagles beat that would satiate this crowd of they haven't beaten anybody?
They've already beaten Dallas. They've already beaten Minnesota. Who else in the NFC? Okay, when they play the Giants, let's see what happens in that game. Outside of Buffalo and Kansas City, I think that the football fan believes in Kansas City. Their record doesn't jump off the page because they have a couple of losses, but outside of beating Buffalo and Kansas City, I'm not sure. And the Eagles certainly don't have a game on their schedule that will jump off the page and say, oh, you beat that team. The only teams are Dallas, which you've beaten, Minnesota, you've beaten, and handily, by the way. You got the Giants twice coming up. And even if the Giants have a sparkling record, I don't know that anybody's going to buy you.
No, nobody will believe in that. They'll say the Giants stink, like I say the Giants stink.
Look, and that doesn't take anything away from the Eagles. They are a tick above, or 2 or 3 ticks above the rest of the conference. And I asked you, most of the time, are you ready to put Philadelphia in the same sentence as Buffalo and Kansas City? Because for whatever reason, guys, I feel like, and maybe it's because I live in a little bit more of a transient area. You do have the Giant fan because of the casinos. You have a lot of Cowboy fans down in this region because of the casinos that think, well, the Eagles haven't beaten anybody. So if you are on the same level, are they on the same level as Buffalo and Kansas City? Maybe.
I think so.
Here's where I'll disagree with both you guys. Now this is an if, I'm giving you a hypothetical here. 6 weeks from now, if the Eagles are 11-1 and the Giants are 10-2, and that's a possibility that both of these teams could go 5-1 in their next 6 games. Nobody's going to be saying, yeah, but the The Giants are a faux 10-2. When you get to 10-2, faux goes out the window. You can't do that anymore.
I
don't know, man. What was
know.
Pittsburgh? What did Pittsburgh race out to? Arizona was 8-0 last year, and really nobody bought them. Pittsburgh, I think, was were they 10-0 or 12-0 or something like that before they fell off the wagon and just fell apart.
Yeah, there are teams, because I mean, you're. By the way, I'll point out you don't believe in Daniel Jones, so you're going to be saying the Giants
defense is impressing me.
Oh, well, yeah. I mean, Wink Martindale, I think Eagles fans would love Wink Martindale if he was their defensive coordinator. Yeah, I mean, they're obviously playing well. Saquon Barkley's finally healthy. We know how talented he is. I'm not saying they don't have good players, but I don't know if anybody's going to believe in the Giants until they beat somebody in the playoffs, and even then they'll be criticizing them. But from this Eagles team's perspective, Mike, and I brought this up earlier in the show, I think everybody looks at, all right, what haven't they done well? They immediately default to special teams. That's fair. I was doing my own self-scout. They are a terrible tackling team. Terrible. Pro Football Focus has graded them 30th of 32.
Ooh.
They're tied with Cleveland. So there's only one team worse in the entire NFL at tackling. Everything else, every other category, with the exception of tackling and special teams, which we know about the special teams, is top 10, basically. Most of them are top 5. Any chance this comes back to bite them? They do not tackle well. And you still have Derrick Henry on the schedule. You still have Jonathan Taylor. You still have Saquon Barkley.
Yeah, I mean, that's what bit them in the Detroit game, right? That was the first week.
And Arizona.
Poorly, right. The games that they have been kind of involved in where they've been closer games, it's been the tackling issue on the defensive side of the ball because, look, they are more inclined to say, hey, we don't think you have a guy that can beat us over the top. We'll let you catch us, but that catch the ball in front. But that's predicated on making the tackle. I mean, the touchdown that Dallas scores inside the red zone there, that's just a poor tackling effort. There's just that's just, hey, waltz right in, one-on-one, and no effort to even make that tackle. So, yeah, if there's a boogeyman of this defense, it's not the way John Gannon calls the defense. It's the way that it's being executed without tackling. That defense doesn't work. You can't let me catch the ball in front of you if I can't tackle you if you catch it. And that's the problem. On those games where they've struggled, it's not so much John Gannon's getting, undressed here. He's calling the defense. They're not tackling.
And my question would be, how do you improve? Because Jonathan Gannon's going to get them all together and go, now I really mean this. We need to tackle. Is that going to work? Oh, my God. Tackling. Oh, how did we not know how to tackle? They're not going to go out and have killer sessions practicing and working on tackling. If they're as bad as both you guys are saying, which I kind of agree with, how are they going to get better at it?
That's a skill. That's a want, right? That's not something that's anymore you don't teach that anymore because you can't practice. You can't hit in practice. You have to have a will and want to get up there and tackle somebody.
So the Eagles' will and want is lacking, is one thing on the defensive side?
Not necessarily all the time. We've seen them perform, right? I think we all could come together and agree that Minnesota offense is pretty good. They've got a lot of playmakers. The Eagles tackled them fine. So, we talk about, I brought this up with the Phillies. To me, I thought the Phillies, what's your ceiling? What's the ceiling? Yeah, you lose to the Cubs, and that's disappointing. You had a rough stretch. But the ceiling, if this team plays its best, the Phillies, they can win the World Series. I thought that a month ago. They had the talent to do it. But are you playing at your ceiling at the right time? That's the same with the Eagles. If they play at their ceiling and tackle, we saw how they can dominate a good offense. You can't expect them to play at their ceiling for 17 weeks, though. That's a fairy tale.
Yeah. Well, that nebulous standard of perfection, I was talking about that. I mean, you can't reach perfection. You can reach a perfect record, the 72 Dolphins did, but you can't play a perfect game. It's not possible.
Well, and we brought this up Monday, and, the Eagles are scoring, but then they're kind of hitting the skids. If they kept scoring, they would do something that no one's ever done. Oh, what are you going to average? 40 plus points per game?
Yeah.
That's not happening. So The fact that they're scoring in bunches can be looked at two ways. Why are you scoring all these points in bunches? But you're averaging. What are they averaging a game? 24 points a game. What do you want them to average? 40 a game? Who does that in the NFL?
Yeah. And Nick Sirianni kind of brought that up and talked about it. And I always say, Jody, the human nature aspect, he kind of said that as well. Look, there are times, and Jonathan Gannon mentioned it yesterday. There are times if you're winning by 2 touchdowns, 3 touchdowns, and you give up a 12-play, 80-yard drive that takes 7 minutes, that's not the worst thing in the world. You're trying to get out of there with a win. And Eagles fans probably didn't like that. They want to 40-0, as most teams do, but it's not realistic. I will say, with the trade deadline coming up, and I'll throw this at you, Mike, I don't want to mess with this team. It's become a cliche. I say it all the time, and I get tired of Nick Sirianni with the connection. We're so close, family, blah, blah, blah. But it's true. I don't want – you and I talked about Deshaun Jackson yesterday. And luckily he signed with the Ravens, and I told you I don't want him on this team. Would he be a better punt returner than Britton Covey? Of course. But I know Deshaun. Deshaun isn't going to be happy being a punt returner. He thinks he's Deshaun Jackson of 25, 26. He thinks he can still play at a high level. I don't want to mess with that chemistry. Am I overreacting to that when you talk about the trade?
No, and, we had the conversation on my show yesterday, and then afterwards, I had asking people, is John right? You said, don't touch the team. What are you going to add to this team? If you brought in Brian Burns, how many snaps is he getting? Who's losing snaps? Brandon Graham, Josh Sweat? Who's losing snaps to somebody of that caliber? It's great to have someone. It's like those Celtics teams from a couple of years ago. They had 9, 10 deep guys, but they couldn't figure out where to get all these guys minutes, and it ended up being a clunky mess towards the end. Sometimes you can have too many talented players. It sounds great for the fans. We got this guy and this guy and this guy, until you have to decide, how am I getting them on the field? How many snaps am I getting said caliber of player? They can't get Jordan Davis on the field as much as fans want. People want Nakobe Dean out there. He can't get on the field. So if you're bringing in a trade, who's sitting? Who's getting replaced?
Here's where I think those who are questioning the Eagles can at least take a stand on questioning a 6-0 team. Your first impression should be, wait, you're questioning a 6-0 team? Yeah, we are. The Eagles have not played a 60-minute game yet. They have not played a game where they've been the better team on one side of the ball or the other for all 4 quarters. They haven't done that. The Bills have. So there's another team in the NFL that has had that dominating win, did it throughout the entire game. The Eagles are 6-0 and the Bills are only 5-1, but the Eagles have not had a 60-minute game yet. And I think it's fair to say we're asking for one. To say we need 60 minutes every single week is just ridiculous. It can't happen. It's unrealistic. But you can ask for one. So I think Eagle fans are within their rights there.
I think you're well within your rights to hope to see a complete game and get that dominating win somewhere. In 17, they had that win when they played Denver and just waxed them. And Denver came in with this, they had the best defense in the league. And that was kind of that statement. I think the Eagles fans are waiting for that statement of belief. When they beat Denver and scored, I think it was 51, that was that feeling of, okay, we can buy in and believe that this team can do something. But what good is it to play your most complete best game in September and October? I don't mind saving that best game. Again, I go back to everybody watching. What's the ceiling? If you believe the ceiling is higher, that they can still get farther, you don't want them to hit that ceiling in October, do you? And then say, well, what happened to that game when they scored 48 against Pittsburgh? I'm okay scoring 26 against Pittsburgh if that means I have a 45-point game somewhere down the road. And I think all of us watching and consuming Birds 365 right now believe that this team can put up a 40-burger on somebody. You're just waiting for the right time.
I'm gonna disagree with Jody's premise there.
Okay.
Their game, it was early. It was week 2. I don't think anybody knew what Philadelphia was or what Minnesota was, but at least through 6 weeks, one team is 6-0, one team is 5-1. The Eagles completely dominated that game from start to finish. You could argue, were there hiccups? Yeah, the block kick. But I told Jody I've been doing my self scout during the week. Now, if you look at Minnesota and their PFF grades, they're all good. At Green Bay, Detroit, New Orleans, Chicago, Miami, they're all good. Against the Eagles, you got a bunch of yellow and reds, which is bad. They were completely dominated by the Eagles. And right now, they're the second best team in the NFC. Why isn't that a signature game?
Well, and I agree. And here, keep this in mind, too. Are the Eagles not a byproduct of the style they play? If you're going on a 17-play drive, you're eating up a lot of clock, which takes away possessions for you to score more, right? I mean, I can't get the big 45-yard touchdown if I'm grinding it out for 17 plays in 10 minutes. I'm chewing 10 minutes of clock. Some teams use 10 minutes to score a couple of times. The nature of them running the ball the way they do, they'll eat up a whole quarter that way to score a touchdown. It takes the ball away from the other team. It just eliminates your chances to score multiple times. So, keep that in mind too. The nature of how the Eagles grind games out probably takes away some of the explosion possibilities in their offense. They're not breaking that big 50-yard run, it seems, so far this season. They're kind of getting these 8s and 10s and 5s and 4s and just keeping that clock rolling.
So, John, let me get this right. The game against the Vikings where they scored 0 points in the second half, you're considering that a 60-minute game?
I'm not. I'm considering it a signature win. When I look at, all right, Philadelphia's the best team, Buffalo's second, Kansas City's third, Minnesota's fourth, according to PFF. They completely dominated that game. They completely dominated that game. They also dominated Washington, but nobody cares about Washington because Washington stinks. They were both stifling wins. How many teams? So it depends what your adjective. Did they play 60 minutes? No, I talk about the lulls all the time, the human nature aspect. When you completely dominate a team, yeah, you kind of get, what?
Right.
All right,
well, here's where I'm going to disagree with you. I don't know that you can say you completely dominated a team when you scored 0 points in the second half.
Well,
that would be a disqualifier for me. If we're looking at, you're asking me what my definition is of completely dominate a team in a game. If you don't score any points in the second half, that's not a complete domination.
To be fair, though, in that game, to say a complete 60-minute game, is it both offense and defense have to be complete? Because they did intercept 3 passes in the second half.
Oh, no, the defense completely dominated.
Right. And then they
I'll sign off on. They held a good offense in check, one of the better offenses in the NFL for all 60 minutes. Yes, defense gets the check mark. Offense gets a half a check mark.
Yeah, I mean, they had a field goal blocked. If they made a field goal and scored 3 points from 41 yards out, I mean, I don't know. But, yeah, their offense has, for whatever reason. But if you go back to that game, even with that, they had an 11-play drive where the field goal got blocked. They had an 8-play drive. They had a 7-play drive. So they shoot up the clock.
I mean, I guess it always depends on people's definitions, and they can have different definitions. But they played 6 games. They completely dominated 2 of them, and that would be Minnesota and Washington, back to back. I don't know what people are looking for. I mean, they're, as I said, they're the number 1 team in the NFL. If you look at the film, they have the number 3 offense, the number 4 defense, the number 2 scoring differential. What more do people want? I mean, it can't get better. Here's where
I'll say it again. Apparently, you don't accept it, which is your want. If you want, they scored 0 points against Washington in the second half. It doesn't get the check mark. You can't go an entire half against a mediocre defense at best and say, complete game, 60 minutes. Not for me. Maybe
Well, I
I'm a
didn't
harder
say
grader than you
I
are.
use the term stifling domination. Again, it depends on your definition. Here's where I'll go. Here's where I'll go with both you guys. I think it's more likely that everyone's saying the Eagles, if they play a complete game, I'll use Jody's definition. How good could they possibly, if they put it together for 4 quarters? I think it's more likely post-bye they play closer to the mean, less dominant than more dominant, just because it's tough to be more dominant than they are right now. How many teams can you point to that finish top 5 in both offense, defense, 2 in scoring differential, 1 in film study? How much better can it realistically get is my question. So for people looking for better, is that realistic?
Yeah, I absolutely think so.
Oh, it can be better. They're averaging.
Well, I guess you could be 1-1-1.
No, I'm talking about the ability to balance out an entire game over 60 minutes. I think there's something to be said to be part of what the stats that you're quoting, John, are compiled at the end of the game. And if one half you're so well off the charts, you can be okay and mediocre in the second half, and you're still one of the best in the NFL. I'd rather see, at least I want to see one game, just one game, so I know they're capable of doing it from kickoff, or I should say deferral, to.
Do you not think, Jody,
the entire game?
Do you have to see it, or do you not believe they can?
Until I see it, I can't guarantee it.
All right.
I'd have to look this up, but in my lifetime, the best football team I ever saw was the 85 Bears. Most dominant football team I've ever seen. I'll try to look it up in a break. I'm pretty sure they weren't 3. They were number 1 in defense. I know that.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure they weren't top 5 in offense. They're probably top 5 in scoring offense.
I'll tell you the team that was the best in your lifetime, my lifetime. Gill's a little younger than us, but probably his lifetime as well, was those early 90 Cowboys. With all those Hall of Famers. They just beat the snot out of you on offense. Jimmy Johnson, we got 5 plays. Go ahead and try and stop us. And nobody could. And they had Hall of Famers on defense, too. Those early 90 Jimmy Johnson coach Cowboy teams are the best teams that I've seen in the last 30 years.
The best individual team to me is still the 85 Bears, but you're right.
85 Bears, by the way, averaged 28.5 points a game. They were second out of 28.
They were dominant. The Cowboys were dominant for a longer period of time, but as good as their defense was at times, it wasn't as good as the offense. The offense kind of ran that team. With the offensive line.
Same as comparing the Bears to the you might just gave us a stat.
But that's what I'm saying.
In the league in scoring.
But that's my point, Jody. That's my point. It's tough to be top 5 in both. It's tough. It rarely happens. It does happen. It rarely happens, and that's why the standard that not only Jody McDonald has expounded, but Jalen Hurts and Nick Sirianni talk about this nebulous standard. We're not up to our standard. But we're not up to our standard. Just stay at this standard. If they stay at this standard.
Both of you guys, it seems to me you're dismissing this. The Eagles are averaging over 21 points per first half this year. They're number 1 in the league by a lot. They're averaging less than 6 points in the second half. They're 31st in scoring in the second half. Can you not look at that and go, whoa, that doesn't make sense? Why would you be so much better in the first and not as good in the second half, and not say that is something that you should at least be investigating and trying to figure out?
Well, it would be something. It would be something if their defense was a problem. It's not. So far, they're only giving up 17 a game. They scored 27. So the necessity for them to score hasn't been there. Your concern is valid. If they need to, can they? I would suggest, we've seen evidence that
we've already seen it. We've already seen the 4-minute drive.
They have taken their foot off the gas and then put it back down on the pedal when needed. But their defense that's the point. A lot of people don't look at this defense as a quote-unquote dominating defense. You know, I used to host a show with Darwin Walker, and he used to say all the time, Jim Johnson told us, I don't care how many yards we give up. I don't care how many big plays they get. As long as it's between the 20 and the 20. 17 points is the number. You get 17 points, that's on the offense if we don't win the game. That's where this team is. It doesn't matter how they look, how they get there. They're only giving up 17 points a game, and they're scoring almost 27. That's a pretty dominating performance for a team, gentlemen, who hasn't reached their ceiling yet. I think we can all agree on that.
Yeah. Well, that's my only point. If they stay at this standard through 17 games in the playoffs, they're going to win the Super Bowl if they stay at this standard. But to Jody's point, and
so you think they beat the Bills on a neutral field?
I think they beat the Bills if they play at this standard. You just told me
earlier today that the Bills would be a 3.5 point choice.
Because I think the Bills are a better team, and I don't think the Eagles are going to stay at this standard. I said if the Eagles stay at this standard that they've been playing through the first 6 weeks.
What makes you think the Bills wouldn't stay at the standard they've been playing?
I think if the Eagles play at this standard for 17 games, they will win everything.
Well, I
don't think they can. That's my point, Joe.
Again, John, I'll ask the question. You believe the Bills are going to fall off. You're theorizing the Eagles will stay at this standard, which is a reach, I get it, for 17 games, but
no, I'm theorizing that the Eagles can't stay at this standard and can't be as consistent as the Bills, who have the better quarterback and the more explosive team. That's my theory. But getting to the larger point, I want to get to in the second half, they've proven with the 4-minute drive, the 4-minute offense in Detroit. They had the long drive in Arizona in the second half in the fourth quarter. They had the long drive against the Cowboys. You've seen them have success in the fourth quarter. I'll also bring up, everybody talks about the second quarter, and I brought this up earlier in the week. Their first drive against Dallas was a 15-play, 80-yard drive. 14 of those plays were in the first quarter. They scored on the first play of the second quarter, so they scored 7 points in the second quarter. Why does that matter?
Yeah, that's why I said the derivation between first half, second half. The in-quarter thing can get into a gray area. To cite the example you just cited, yeah, that's a whole lot of first quarter production, but the payoff's in the second. Halftime's halftime. Yeah. There's a true derivation there. You go in your locker room, you get something to drink, you get coached up a little bit, and you come back out onto the field. That, I think, is a more realistic look and say, why are we better in one half than the other half?
Well, and keep in mind, we're talking about if they played Buffalo on neutral site. New England was favored to win the Super Bowl, and Philadelphia beat them. I mean, regardless of what your resume looks like, it's what happens on that particular day, no matter how you get there. The two games that Philly won to get to that Super Bowl, they dominated defensively. You know, they dominated the Falcons. They dominated the Vikings in that game. And then their defense was horrible against the Vikings, the Patriots until they needed a play. So, again, it goes back to, what is your ceiling? Do you have playmakers? Do you have somebody when needed the most? Last year, on 3rd down and 7, they couldn't convert because they didn't have A.J. Brown. Now, if my back's to the wall and I'm struggling offensively, I only have 13 points, but the score's 13-10 and I need a first down, well, I have A.J. Brown. I didn't have that guy last year. On defense, if my defense is struggling and we've given up 38 and it's 3rd down and 7 and I need a sack, well, now I've got Hassan Reddick. I got Brandon Graham. I didn't have Brandon Graham last year. I couldn't get that sack in that moment. Do you have the ceiling on the day that the game happens in the style of the game? Look at the game in Buffalo, Kansas City on Sunday. They played 6 months ago. It was 42-38.
Everybody, that bothered
me. It was 24-20.
That bothered me. The whole league overreated to that game.
And if you listen to my podcast, Believe in the Bet, I told you to take the under in that game. That was an easy bet for me.
Yeah. That was the consistent standard of Buffalo and Kansas City. It was absurd the way the league reacted to that game.
Well, we as a sports society, whatever happens in these games, we want to compartmentalize them and take them out and say that's who you are for every single game. Every game is its own individual day. matchups. You know, I was talking to the guy yesterday. I said, you don't know when you play on a Sunday what happened the night or the week leading up. Did this guy's kid get sick and he was up all night taking care of his kid? Did his wife get sick? He had to drive his kid to school and that knocked his routine out. We don't know what happens in the weeks leading up to these games that change the complexion of what we watch on a given Sunday. Every Sunday, if we haven't learned that by now, is completely different in this league.
MG, we know you'll be on the air on 97.3 ESPN Sports Bash later on this afternoon. Have a good time then. We had a good time talking to you here. Thanks, bud.
Thanks,
Mike. All right,
Mike.
we'll see you.
Mike Gill here with us on Birds 365. All right, quickie timeout. We got to come back, put a ball on the show. Running out of time here on Birds 365.
The greatest fans on earth. It's a bold statement, but would you expect anything less from Philadelphia? 58 years of heartache creates a toughness, a grit, a resolve not found in most. Sure, our prayers were answered, but now that we've had a taste, we're looking for more. Pondley Hockey, official partner of the Philadelphia Eagles.
Action News at 11 with Rick Williams. It's the team you trust to bring it all together. The stories that impact your community, a sports roundup for the locals, and the AccuWeather forecast you depend on. Action News at 11 with Rick Williams.
Go to get your game on. Go for the beers. Go for the cheers. Go for the hit and the hits. Go for the stakes and the stakes. Go to get your parlay on. Go to get your party on. Go for the scene. Go for the screens. Go for the gallery. Go for the win. Go to Ocean. Visit theoceanac.com to plan your visit.
Since 1977 at Rafferty Subaru, we have always been about our customers and the community. Early on, a safe and durable option, we've evolved to become the best overall brand according to Kelley Blue Book. Over the last 14 years, we've donated thousands of dollars through the Subaru Share the Love event and found homes for hundreds of pets. The Rafferty family is proud of our 45 years in business. This month, celebrate our anniversary with special financing on select models. Visit us and see why.
At Stateside Vodka, every new customer gets the world's best rocks glass. Free.
What's that?
A rocks glass?
You're telling me that bottle is cut in half?
You could say that. Holy shit.
And you're telling me I can get one of these glasses for free?
That's right. One free rocks glass per customer with each first-time purchase of Stateside Vodka. So good, it just disappears.
Time to put a bow on the show here on Birds 365. J-Mac, it's a walkthrough Wednesday. You gonna get that?
Walking through, baby. No practice. I don't know what to
go out
do
and take a walk around the block just to.
Oh yeah,
stay,
I gotta do
prep.
that to keep up for the season. But I do that every day anyway. By the way, Ben, I gotta criticize myself here, Jody. Bad example, the 85 Bears, because they were number 1 on defense and number 2 on offense. So they were that good.
But they were much better on defense. Whatever the rankings were, the defense made it so much easier.
Oh yeah.
No
the defense.
asked.
The defense was the great.
But
I didn't know the offense.
What was Jim McMahon ranked as the quarterback in the NFL?
I don't know, but they were second to, and they got a lot of yards too. They were Now remember, they have Walter Payton as well in his prime, so maybe the greatest running back of all time,
Exactly.
certainly in the conversation. But I didn't realize how good they were offensively. They were good offensively as well. We all know how good that defense was.
I think if I remember correctly, a lot of short fields. But get the other team to go for 3 and out. Way too many possessions.
Yeah, no doubt about it. But San Diego was number 1. They had 6,535 yards. You remember that San Diego offense. Chicago was number 2, 5,830. So they were pretty good as well. So it was interesting. They were better than I thought.
And they got to do a dance that still to this day gets some pub, the Super Bowl shuffle. All right, partner. I say we do this again in 22 hours. You in for it?
I'm in. Let's do it.
Johnny Mac, Jody Mac, back in 2 and 2.
You've been listening to Birds 365, the destination for the passionate Eagles football fan who bleeds green. If it's Eagles football, we're talking about it. Debate inside the locker room and guests that are some of the greatest football minds from around the region. We hope you enjoyed the show. We know we had a blast. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and we'll be back soon. But in the meantime, hook up with us on social media at JAKIB Sports. See you next time on Birds 365.